would you say are the key pieces then? Someone's listening to this, they're a yoga teacher, maybe they've heard of trauma, maybe they've heard of Bessel van der Kolk or Peter Levine. What would be your sort of top, right, here's the things every yoga teacher should know as the basic starter pack?
So number one is that it's actually all down to you. If you can hold the space and feel grounded within yourself and hold compassionate boundaries for somebody else, then you can do it. It's actually because a lot of it is common sense, thinking about how to deal with somebody who's distressed, how to help somebody to calm down if they overstimulated, giving people choice and a sense of agency, something that is definitely taken away when you are experiencing trauma, is number one thing.
So there's a couple of things you said that are really interesting already, right? One, yoga is about self-regulation, right? Like it's usually about calming yourself down, sometimes about waking yourself up. So, but it's got self-regulatory tools built into it, all the breathing exercise, the asana, whatever. Second, so yoga's almost got that already there. There's some common sense things, isn't there, of sort of like, you know, what's too much, what's too little, right?
That's right.
Like we do this all the time. We do this when we're on a date. We do this when we talk to a child. We do this when we meet a new person. Like we're meeting for the first time. So I'm not like telling you like my biggest stories in the world, because there's a sort of getting to know each other, you know, there's a sort of, you know, there's a felt sense of that in the body and just socially. But then the authority one's interesting, isn't it? Because on the one hand, people that have often had trauma have had their sense of agency violated. Like that's almost by definition, right? It's like you had a boundary, someone crossed it, and you couldn't defend yourself, right? For whatever reason, you know, you couldn't say no because you're in the fight or flight, freeze response, or, you know, you couldn't fight someone off, or you were too young, or they were your boss, or, you know, there's all these reasons why you lost that power, and you can develop this sense of powerlessness, lose that sense of agency. And now a yoga class is generally doing exactly what you're told by someone else. That's a normal yoga class, right? So what you're saying about choice, that's not the yoga that I first encountered. Like that's not the Ashtanga primary series.
No.
Right?
Yeah, definitely not.
But this is so self-regulation is probably yoga. Your yoga is probably self-regulatory, but it's not necessarily about choice. That's often a bit new. So maybe you could say a little bit more about that piece.
I think ultimately it's about helping people to develop inner self-trust and helping them to learn how to self-regulate. Every single, you know, for 16 years working in social care, it's always about what I learned. One thing, it's always about helping people to be able to do stuff for themselves, not rely on services, not rely on anybody else. And it's the same with yoga, allowing people to have a choice, whether you're doing it privately or in a class, and saying to them, listen within your body. How does it feel? If it feels like it's too much, back off. One of the signs is if your breathing is too heavy, your body is already telling.
That's a simple,
exactly.
Right? So
but
that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, but sometimes not breathing is just that they're concentrating so much. So if you remind them to breathe, maybe they can stay in that pose. Maybe it is right on the edge if they remember to breathe. So if you come to any of my classes, you will hear me talking a little bit, you know, are you still breathing? Are you trying to?
One of the ironies of being an embodiment teacher, you're constantly reminding people to breathe and getting paid for it. I always thought that was quite funny. I'm like, breathe, and I say, you're paying me money to say this.
But if I can say one other thing, it's about the poses. It's just reminding people. I think there can be quite a lot of competition and challenge in the classes. Certainly over the years, I've been in classes where people are trying hard because the person next to them is trying really hard, but they've been practicing for 10 years and there is a new person and all of that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of it is down to conditioning. And so people sometimes need to hear again and again, we all have different bodies. We all need to just pay attention within. We all need to just, you know, I can invite people to do that. If it doesn't feel right, they can rest. They can do another variation of the same pose.
Yeah,
because ultimately
comparison and competition are natural human tendencies, and they're conditioned, and we may choose to go with them or not, right? Like that's not I think it's a very normal thing for people to do, to compare and to compete, and may choose to step away from that in a yoga environment. I don't think we have to actually, but I think it's useful to notice if it's habitual. I think it becomes just an equal tyranny to say there's no competition, there's no comparison, because that, again, at this point, there's no choice again.
I completely agree, but it has to be, but sometimes that competition is illogical. And what people don't realize is, I can tell you a little story. So this guy came into the class, very clear Ashtangi.
You know, looks
well,
smart,
yeah, very, very clearly. Came in, was in the first row of the class, and we were doing our practice. And I've seen him before when I still had studio a couple of years ago. He came to one of the classes, and the reaction of everybody else was the same. So everybody is looking because he is so ultra mobile. And I can see how people are watching and kind of, you know, I can almost
this is the real yoga. He's good at yoga.
I can almost kind of read their thoughts. And then so he left. It was quite nice. Said hello, kind of, we chatted. The next week, as we came in, a couple of people said, "Oh, I wish I was able to do that." This is where it's a bit of an illogical thinking. So I said to them, yes, I said to them, of course you can. If you are able to devote 2 hours per day for a few years, you will be like that. It's great.
What age, right? If I'm in a yoga class and there's a 19-year-old skinny mini young girl next to me, of course she's going to be more flexible. I'm a 40-year-old bloke who sits at a desk most of the day. Yes, I exercise. Yes, I walk in the park. Yes, I'm an embodiment teacher. But I'm twice her age and I'm a geezer. I've got twice as much muscle mass as she has or will ever have, right? This is just biology. So it's like, if I'm comparing my flexibility to her or she's comparing her strength to me, it's just not going to happen. I'm stronger than her. She's more flexible than me. We're different human beings. Like, why compare? It's not logical.
Exactly. But sometimes people don't recognize that.
Right. I guess I'm with you on that 100%. And where I'm also adding is that I find in Buddhist centers and those kind of environments, it becomes another kind of tyranny that we have to be cooperative all the time. And, you know, sometimes it's good to be like, right, I did 4 pull-ups yesterday. I'm going to try and do 5 today. And I'm not going to hurt myself, but that's an appropriate. Competing with my past self from 2 days ago may have some appropriateness to it. Right? I don't want to like repress that yang side, or else it ends up, you end up getting the passive aggressive Buddhists. I did martial arts and Buddhists were always the most aggressive people. Always. Whenever we did martial arts, Buddhists were the worst they're always tweaking you and hitting you when you're not looking. It's because they'd repressed that. So it's like, I think we need to address that side too. Okay, so giving choice, stepping away from maybe the old yoga model where there isn't so much choice. And we've had other people on the show, Sarah Holmes de Castro and other trauma-informed yoga teachers that have talked about, offering suggestions like, hey, you can do it this way, and not making one more advanced, right? Like, why is it more advanced to get your foot behind your head? It's just different, right? And choices, self-regulation, working with boundaries, working with trust, self-trust. One thing you said I think is not obvious though, which is self-listening. So you hear a yoga teacher say, listen to your body. What does that mean? And someone that's been traumatized may have a numb body. They may be like trying to repeat their own trauma, right? That sort of repetition compulsion urge. They might be so used to intensity from all the adrenaline of this hyperarousal of their trauma that they constantly push it too hard because that feels normal to them. Or they may be so spaced out that any feeling at all is numbing, is too intense. So it's not an obvious thing to someone with trauma to say, listen to your body or your body knows. It's a bit more complicated than that, isn't it?
Definitely. And that's, And my feeling is that a lot of people who talk about listening to your body don't really know how to do that because it's not specific enough. Right. And it's another skill really to be able to do that. So there are 2 things really when it comes to yoga: understanding that the body communicates through sensations and how to respond to those sensations. And that's where compassion comes in, and inviting people the sense of agency. And then there is the other side, which is listening to the body wisdom as we do in focusing, which is the embodied listening, which is a slightly different practice altogether.
Yeah, it's a bit deeper in there, isn't it? But just sensation level is a little bit slower, deeper, a bit more to it.